Hello and welcome to Making Notes Actionable with Evernote. This is for the Task Management and Time Blocking Summit 2021. And so welcome and thank you to Francis Wade for inviting me here to speak at the summit on and for this session, Making Notes Actionable with Evernote. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sidney Smith, and I have been an Evernote user since roughly 2009, so very early on in Evernote's days. I also became an Evernote certified consultant back in 2016, and I have been acting as one of the Evernote regional leaders for North America since about 2018, 2019, I think, or so. And so I'm obviously very happy with Evernote and love using Evernote, and so love sharing with others how to make more productive use of the tool. And I also host a podcast called Getting More Done with Evernote, where I talk about Evernote and talk about its updates, and also, of course, bring on guests both from Evernote and Evernote certified consultants like myself who are in different industries and fields doing and using Evernote out there in the world. So with that, today's agenda is really going to be all about getting you to understand how to capture, how to organize, and how to take action inside of Evernote. And so I will be talking about these in kind of three big buckets. And I'll be talking about the ABCs of capturing. That is, always be capturing, always be connecting, and always be consolidating. I'm then going to talk about the concept of organizing. And really in organizing, it's about nomenclature, tagging consistently, and structuring your stacks and notebooks consistently. And then finally, we're going to close out with taking action. And really that really talks about how to identify projects and actions so that you're capable of keeping your notes active and alive, that they're moving things forward for progress, not just being static and sitting there for no reason. How to make each note actionable in a way, and then of course grouping for resource availability, efficiency, and effectiveness. And we're going to talk about some of those components. And we'll close out with some information that if you have any questions after today's session, how to reach me, and I can be happy to answer those questions for you. I think there's a Q&A session at the live summit, so I'll obviously be there for answering those questions, but I'll be available by the information on the final slide when we get there. So a couple of housekeeping notes. One is this slide will be shared with you somehow. I will have Francis Wade share the slide link, and in the slide link, I think there's one or two links to notes so that you're capable of accessing those notes if you want to as templates. So don't worry about having access to this. There's a little bit of, there are notes in there and it'll be shared with you so you can go ahead and see those. So with that, let's hop on out of this presentation and jump on over to Evernote. So Evernote went through a complete overhaul of its system, and so we were running in Evernote 10 across Mac, Windows, Android, and iOS, and that includes iPad OS. And so we have all new applications in the product suite that is Evernote. And so we will be demoing that today together, and so we can look at these so that you can see kind of what's new in Evernote and how it all works, but kind of see how it's all working. So as I said before, we're going to be talking about capturing, organizing, and taking action in Evernote. And of course, the first thing we have to think about is capturing. As I said, always be capturing is our first concept in the capture phase, and always be capturing, what I mean by that are really two things. How do we capture into what we call the default notebook? That is, how do we capture into Evernote no matter where we are? And Evernote really gives us a whole bunch of ways to do that. One, it gives us the desktop application and the mobile applications, as well as what is called the email into address. And I'll walk you through some of these pieces. So let's start with the email into address. The email into address is available to you actually from clicking on your account profile and then clicking on account info. And from your account info, it'll pop up a screen, or it'll open up the browser and take you to that browser window. And in that browser window, if you're an Evernote Premium subscriber, you will see an email address. That is a secret email address that allows you to email into Evernote. So you can email content from anywhere into Evernote, and when it does, it lands in your default notebook. Your default notebook I have chosen to rename as Inbox. You can see here in my demo account, if I scroll down here, I have this Inbox, okay? And so we have this Inbox, and it's typically called First Notebook when you create a new Evernote account, and you can call it whatever you'd like. But the idea here is that you have a dedicated notebook in your system for being able to capture things. But of course, we're always not in our email. We may be in different parts of our computer, and we want to be able to do that. So there are keyboard shortcuts that allow you to be able to go ahead and trigger those. Now, note that I'm on a Windows machine, so there may be slight differences in how we're triggering this, but for the most part, if you use Command forward or Control forward or Command forward on the Mac, you're going to go ahead and get this keyboard shortcuts pop out, and that's going to give you all of the keyboard shortcuts that we're talking about today. Okay, so don't worry about that. Just Command /. That's the key to the left of Shift, typically on the right Shift button on most keyboards, so you'll be able to find that. So Control and then that / key. And so when we're in here, we have a keyboard shortcut to do a couple of things here that are really useful for being able to always capture. We want to be able to capture anytime we have a new thought. We just want to capture that into Evernote so that it can remember it. I think of Evernote as my external brain, as my second brain, so that when my biology fails me, it will do the job of remembering for me. And so the first keyboard shortcut that's very powerful in the system is Control-Alt-H. And Control-Alt-H, or Command-Alt-H, I think it is on the Mac, but you can verify that with the Control or Command / on the Mac. And what that does is it opens up the Quick Note functionality. And in Quick Note, that allows us to start typing into this field, and it automatically saves that and can now be converted into a note in Evernote. And of course, I can pop this out and open up Evernote. I can convert this to a note, which is pretty much what I want to do. And what will happen now is, because I opened up that quick note that it has titled the note here, Note March 3rd, and the time, right? And so now it's all available to me here to start continuing that note where I began inside the quick note. Now, of course, I may be in other parts of the system and I actually want to open up a full note. That quick note may not be as robust or capable of doing what I want. I want to copy maybe some images or a PDF or those kinds of things. Those are sitting on my clipboard and I want to be able to paste those into the system. This is where Control-Alt-N comes into play, and Control-Alt-N here gives me a brand new full-size note, and it starts me directly inside of the note editor. And we know I'm inside the note editor because the note editor toolbar is lit up. It's not grayed out. If I type into the title field, you will see here that grays out. But if I'm inside of the text editor, the note editor, I have the live toolbar lit up and colored, and that allows me to take what is on my clipboard or just start typing directly into the note, or I can click on templates and see the template gallery and immediately start using the functions inside of the full note. And that really powers up my ability to quickly capture into Evernote, and that way I'm always capturing. Okay. Now, of course, I didn't change anything. I just hit Control-Alt-N. So, of course, it captured that also into the default notebook, my inbox. Okay. And then finally, when we're not on desktop and we're on the road, say we're out at the grocery store, we're walking down the street. Maybe we're sitting in a parking lot and we have an idea, we have a thought, someone comes to you with a question or something like that, and you say, oh, let me take that down and get back to you. That's where Evernote Mobile really shines. So this is just a quick screenshot of Evernote Mobile, and what happens is at the bottom of your screen you have a new note button, that pill-shaped note button, and that new note button gives you a little arrow. It's a little disclosure arrow to the right side of the new note button, and you are capable of clicking on that, and then it triggers this new drawer that pops up. And look at all the ways in which you can capture. I can record an audio note, I can start sketching, I can draw an image, say that I'm a real estate developer and I want to be able to just sketch out something quickly, or I'm an architect or in a creative profession and I want to be able to just quickly remember a logo design. I can go ahead and just click start sketching, and with my finger I can quickly sketch the idea and I'm good to go. Click save and run. Now I can add attachments, I can take a photograph of the thing. So many times I find something, a little doodad around the house breaks, and I want to make sure I have the right part when I go to the hardware store. Well, great. I pull out Evernote. I click on take a photograph from within Evernote's mobile application. I take a photograph of the thing and make sure I take a picture of maybe any of the engraved numbers on the little broken widget, take a picture of the product packaging, the SKU, you name it. I take pictures of all of those items, save it directly into Evernote, I title it effectively, and now I'm able to find it again. Now, of course, you can always just create a new blank note and start typing directly into the note as well. But that first principle of being able to utilize capture in Evernote and making notes more actionable is, of course, capturing content into Evernote. Always be capturing. Now, next is the idea of always be connecting. Always be connecting notes together. And what I mean by that is that Evernote really makes it quite useful for us to be able to take notes and connect them together. And what we can do now by making those notes connected together, we can actually start the process for getting into action faster. And so I'll use the example here of I have project 123. And for project 123, I actually have 3 tasks, and I've captured each of those tasks as individual notes. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But here I have task A1, as task A2, and task A3. Now, of course, I can put these in all kinds of places. I could select these other items, and I can say I want to move these tasks to different places. Right? So maybe I want to move these, for example, to my actions notebook. Okay. Now, these items that are there are going to be out of sight when I'm looking at project 123. And at the same time, though, I want to remember that project 123 is associated with those tasks. Well, it turns out that if I go to each individual task, or I can select all of them and right-click and do some fun things like copying internal note links, I could go ahead and copy those note links. There's a keyboard shortcut associated with that as well. And then back in my project itself, project 123, I can just quickly go ahead and paste those in. I've already done that here, but you can see I've gone ahead and pasted them in. Now, note, what this gives me is a great deal of power, because now what I can do is I can create it as a checklist, I can create it as bullet points, I can give it numbers, but more importantly than that, these are really now fungible items that I can sort. So for example, I may need to do these in the order of A3, A2, and then A1, but maybe things change. And so when I get back to this, I decide, you know what, I need to actually do this in the order of A1, A2, and then A3. And now I know when I'm working on project 123 what the sort order is. So these checklists give me the capability of really now having these tangible units that I can work in. And once I need to actually do that task, I can hop over to that task here inside of Actions just by clicking on the green hyperlink, and now I'm in the task itself. That means any notes that are related to that task can be embedded here inside of the note itself. The task A represents the actual action, but the note edit body itself gives me the capability of adding more rich context. It could be photographic, it could be audio, it could be imagery, it could be connections to Google Drive documents, all kinds of things. And that brings us to the insert button. So in Evernote 10 and later, you will now see the blue insert button, and that gives us some capabilities of inserting all kinds of things. But in essence, anytime you're going to insert something into Evernote, you'll find that now from the insert button, which is that blue plus sign in the Evernote Note Editor toolbar. So if I wanted to go ahead and add a sketch, I can go ahead and click Sketch, sketch something out directly inside of that. I can do that with my mouse, touchpad, stylus, what have you, directly on the desktop, do that on mobile, do that on the tablet. Okay? And we have lots of different options now directly from the insert menu. But each task unit is individualized in the system, but I can always go back to my projects and I can see, okay, here goes my project, 1, 2, 3, and of course I can now move this project into my projects notebook. So I can say I want to go into projects and then click projects, and now those can live in the projects list, the actions can live in the actions list, and I can connect those two by connecting them via note links. So always be connecting, always be capturing, and then we get to the process of always connecting, always be connecting. And last but not least is the concept of consolidation. Always be consolidating. I talk about the idea of knowledge units to be more actionable in Evernote, because many times what we do is we overwhelm our system with many, many notes. And the reality is the fewer notes we have, the faster we can get to doing what we need to do. And what I mean by that is that I don't want you to think, oh, I have to have fewer notes in order to be more productive. But the practical matter is that the fewer notes about every subject that you have, every grouping of things you want to be able to find in Evernote, the faster you can get back to the living life. And so having fewer notes of any one type of subject or any one subject is going to be much more powerful than having many notes about the same subject. And so knowledge units is how I solve for that problem. Knowledge units are, in essence, the collective knowledge around any one particular topic, whether that's stoicism or language or other kinds of things. So, for example, I happen to be a fan of learning languages. And so I, for example, am a fan of the German language and culture, and French and Chinese, Cantonese, and all kinds of other things, right? And so I keep notes about what I'm learning for any given language at any time in a notebook for that language. And so let's say I have a notebook called German, and I'll keep that German notebook in my personal notebook, right? In my personal stack. So there goes German. But I go throughout my day and I might come across things that are about German culture. And what I want to do is I want to group those items together in a singular note. But of course, they come into my system as multiple notes. And so I want to consolidate those into an individualized note at any given time. And so here what we have is 3 notes. A German song for children, Gehören sind alle meine Kleider, right? And so this is a simple song, and I want to be able to check this out later. I also have a note about Fasching, which is a kind of carnival in Germany. And then, of course, I happen to live in Pennsylvania, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about the Pennsylvania Dutch. And so here we are with 3 different notes. And what I can do now is I can actually select those notes together. And down here in the Evernote toolbar, I am now given the ability to merge notes. It's also Shift Control M or Shift Command M in the system, and now I can go ahead and merge these notes so that I can connect them. We have some new options now when it comes to merging notes, and so when we go to merge notes, we have the ability to retitle that note, and in this case, I would retitle this note German Culture or some other temporary name, because this is actually a temporary place for us to be able to hold that, right? So I'm going to just do this for demonstrative purposes, but I'm going to say the German Culture copy, and then you can see here that we have 3 notes that are going to be merged. Note that we can also organize the order in which they will be merged, which notes will come above the others, and then we have some advanced options. We can keep the original notes, we can separate the notes with a divider line between them, and we can also merge in the note titles so that between each note that we've merged, in the new note, you will see a line and then the note title because we've told it to do so. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to merge these 3 notes, and now we're going to see one note with a new title, German Culture Copy. Now, we can see here we have the note title from the original notes plus the divider lines, right? We have the divider line here, again, the note title, and so on and so forth. Great. Now, what do we do with it? Now, remember, we have a German Culture knowledge unit waiting for us in our German notebook. If we hop over here, you can see here goes a German Culture note, and you can see here goes all of my, let's pretend, prior German cultural notes that I have merged and placed into the system. Now, what I want to do is I want to be able to go over to our prior note, which was in our inbox. And all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to Control or Command A to copy everything from in the note, Control X or Command X to cut everything from this note, and I'm just going to place it into our German Culture note. And so I would scroll to the bottom of this note and then go ahead and paste it. So put in a divider line and go ahead and paste it. And now all of the sum total of knowledge I know about German culture will ultimately be placed inside of the singular note. Now, of course, there are probably other notes that I may not want to have collectively only in this German culture note. But this German culture note will be the only note in the system that is named German culture. And I can, of course, use note links to embed other parts of German culture that are on different topics inside of this German culture note. So maybe at the top here, I might decide that there are some other notes in the system, and I will link to those notes from within this system. So there may be note titles here, note title 1. There might be another note from another German culture item from within the system here, and I can just keep linking to different things here, right? Going back to always be connecting. Right now I have a German notebook with the German culture knowledge unit, and that knowledge unit now represents for me whenever I'm wanting to look for things about German culture, it's all here in this one note. And if it's not in here, it's very quickly jump to from note links that sit here at the top of it. Now, if I'm looking for a German song for children, all I have to do is Control F or Command F within the note and type in German song. Right? And it's going to automatically jump me to what is 6 references to German song in the system, and I'm going to be able to find that. Okay, so this is the power of having a knowledge unit. This is the power of consolidating. Now, of course, I'm going to go back to my inbox, and I'm just going to delete this copy note, right? It's now just an empty vessel anyway, and so I'll go ahead and move that to trash. And that's consolidating inside of Evernote. So that's capture. Capture is always be capturing, always be connecting, always be consolidating. You can just choose to do this once a week. Everything that shows up in your inbox, you can do this on a daily basis. You can move those notes to individual notes, or you can leave it in your inbox and then once a week just go through and consolidate. Keep merging things throughout the week so you have just a few notes in your inbox left, and then go and take those items and throw them into their appropriate notes, so that over time what you have is more and more valuable notes that allow you to be able to find things faster, because the faster you can find things, the faster you can get back to living your life. All right, let's move on to organizing. Organizing is a fundamental and fundamentally important function within Evernote. And so, of course, we want to be able to do some things that allow us to regularly find things faster, but also getting things into the system faster. So first and foremost, making sure that we are naming our notes consistently. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to name your notes necessarily, but just think about it from the perspective that if you have a bunch of items in your system that are named differently, you want to be able to figure out how to get into action faster. And so, for example, here, just consistency. So, for example, I have task A3, task A1, task A2. Choosing to name things consistently means that you can actually search for those things faster. So if I go into Evernote and I go into search and I type in something like the advanced search operator for searching the title, and I search for in title task, it's going to, of course, find all notes that have task in the title. And of course, in the system here, it's going to tell me that I have 3 tasks, right? Just by consistently naming the note, I've been capable of filtering and then finding the appropriate tasks that I'm looking for. I've been able to filter down to just the few tasks, the few notes that have task in the title, and then I've been able to find the exact task I was looking for. In this case, I was looking for task A1. So filtering and then finding is capable when we name things effectively. Similar to that, if I named all of my tasks in the system with the word call at the beginning, call Susan, call Bill, call Sally, what I'm going to be able to do is do the same kind of search, and I could just type in title : call, and now call is going to filter out anything that's not call, and there we go. In the search results, I have one note, and it's call the rental company to rent the party bus. Perfect. So I have this capability of quickly filtering and finding things by naming things consistently. So you choose what the nomenclature is. You can decide that every meeting note, for example, is going to have a date and time in the note title, so that when you go to search back later, you can go ahead and search for those things. So you might decide that, okay, I'm going to put a date in every new meeting note. Well, don't stop there. Make sure that you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to date everything this specific way, so that if you put in MAR, 3, space 21, that's going to be very different than 03/03/2021. You want to make sure that you're now just making a decision from here on out. I'm going to date and time everything in the same format so that I'm able to search for all of the things that are in March, all of the things that are in 2021 that are meeting notes. And you might even say, I'm going to start every note title with meeting, meeting with, and then the name of the people, and then the date. You get to choose, but all I want you to do is to be consistent with the naming process. As long as you choose the naming process consistently, then finding and filtering things become that much easier. Now, we don't stop there. Sometimes naming things are not the only ways in which we can go ahead and slice and dice our data. And this comes down to our tags. Tags are a way of connecting things across many different notebooks and stacks. And so tags give us the capability of saying, okay, I have things that are in different notebooks and stacks. So notes live inside of notebooks, notebooks live inside of stacks, and none of the others may mix, but tags are the powerful way to find things across or group things across many different notebooks and stacks. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and in any area of my life, let's choose marketing, for example, we can go ahead and choose how things are organized, but also the way in which things move forward. So for example, in this marketing tags section, what I want to do is I want to tag consistently the phase or the status of any given referral. If I were using this, say, as a very lightweight CRM, I can see here that we have different stages of giving referrals. So this person is a referral that I've given. I can tag those notes as referral given. And once that referral has been given to someone, have they actually converted into a sale for that person? They let me know, and that's great. If I've received a referral from a business client or a business colleague, I can tag that person as a contact and as the referral received. And then once they go ahead and convert and turn into a sale, then I can say, oh, great, now they are a referral received and converted. So we can identify notes and therefore people, projects, things as their status, but we can also organize things by virtue of all kinds of other interesting pieces. For example, we can identify actions by virtue of context. So we can say, these are items where I want to talk to these people, and so each note represents something that I want to talk to them about. So each note that I want to talk to my spouse about gets tagged the spouse tag, and it can live in any notebook in the entire system. But when I'm ready to talk to them, I click on the spouse tag, and now everything that is tagged spouse will show up. All of my calls, instead of just starting every note that's an action for a call with call Susan, call Bill, call Sally, I can now tag all of my calls in the system, and any action that is a call will then show up as calls if I click on call. Okay? We have lots of power here, so I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but I just wanted you to see that you can organize things, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later when we get to taking action. And finally, we can talk about stacks and notebooks. And stacks and notebooks are this area of great creativity. You have the capability of organizing in so many different ways within Evernote, but inside of the notebooks area, what we want to be able to do is organize your stacks and notebooks. That is, notebooks are organized inside of stacks where they live by themselves. So these little three bars here, those are stacks. Okay, so here we have 6 stacks, and below that we have 5 notebooks. Okay, you can see that the notebooks are the little dark notebook items, and then the little things that look like stacked notebooks are the stacks. Okay, and of course stacks contain notebooks. And so in this particular case, it contains 11 notebooks, and we can collapse and expand those notebooks. And so that gives us a little bit of structure to be able to group together notes into notebooks. Stacks contain those notebooks. And what we want to be able to do is to think about a way to make this easier for us to do a couple of things. One, as we're taking things into our inbox, we want to be able to quickly get those things in our inbox into the appropriate notebooks. And so stacks and notebooks give us the capability of organizing them in such a way that allows our brain to take off the cognitive load of identifying where things go. So the way in which I see it is that you should probably think about the way in which you organize everywhere else in your world. So for example, if you have Google Drive and you have your documents folder on your desktop, or in Finder, for example, your documents inside on the Mac, you have perhaps iCloud or Dropbox or you name it. You have other systems in which you have organized already your paper file system. You may have folders for finances, a folder for legal, a folder for bills, and so on and so forth. You may have all kinds of other things, health, medical, you name it. However you structure your world, synchronize them, make them all the same. So if you have a health folder on your computer, now you should have a health notebook in Evernote. And that means you should have a health folder in your physical file folder. Having them all the same means that when you get an email about something that's related to health, maybe your local fitness gym sends you a message saying, hey, by the way, you haven't been here in a while. What's going on? Would you like to come in and have a fitness training session, get yourself back in shape? Okay, great. You know that you can now take that item and put it into some place, and you decide where that place is consistently. If it's in Evernote, well, great. Then it just goes into your personal health item, right? You put it into the appropriate place where you are going to do that. So you want to make sure that you are consistently across the board. Now I take it a step further. I've synchronized my Google Drive, my desktop, my email folders. In my case, I use Gmail for both work and personal, and so those are Gmail labels. All of those match up, including my calendar. I have separate calendars for each of my areas that I call life categories. So we can look at them here. This is a starting point for you, and there's a link to this in the slides that I'm sharing with you. And so you can just start with these 10 or 11 different categories. And so you can think of them as life categories and say to yourself, okay, these are the buckets. Everything in my life fits into one of these categories, or you can go ahead and add new ones. And now when anything comes into my world, I'm going to make sure that my health calendar, gym appointments, doctor's appointments, anything that's related to that. If I want to start a meditation practice, all of that's going to go into my health calendar. Anything related to professional or business, that's going to go into my professional or business calendar. So I might choose to call it professional. And then education, I'm going to have an education calendar. So if I'm in school, I'm studying for a bachelor's or master's or a PhD or some other professional degree, I can go ahead and put that on my education, my classes, my coursework. If I'm going to go for office hours to see the professor, if I have study time, a study group session, all that's going to go on my education, and so on and so forth. What this does is it bulks together what are like things, but now when I think about, okay, where do I send the most recent information regarding my recent course that I'm taking? Well, it's going to be inside of my education stack, and I can hop over to Evernote now, and I'll create an education stack here, and maybe I'll have a course that'll be titled the course number, so like, EDU 455 will be the course ID, and then the name of the course as the notebook name, and that's where I'm going to place that item. But there's no question in my mind where it's going to go, because I have structured consistency across the board, that things that are the same look the same across all the systems: email, calendar, storage. Okay, so I'm really, really bullish on this idea, and I hope that you adopt this and take this to heart, because it reduces so many issues around sorting and just filing things quickly and effectively in Evernote, really across your entire productivity systems. Okay, last but not least is taking action, turning things into action. So once we have these pieces of capturing and organizing really down pat, we now need to make things actionable in our systems. And this is where I really think that every time you take notes or you have a meeting, you should probably immediately identify projects and actions associated with that. So let's take the example of meeting notes. I'm going to go ahead and create a new notebook, and I'm going to choose that I'm going to create a notebook called meetings and put that into my company stack. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new meetings notebook, and I'm going to go into that notebook, and now I'm going to create a new meeting. And so here we are. I have a meeting note, and I'm going to now decide that whenever I have a meeting, I'm going to say meeting with, and then it's going to say Jane Smith, and I'm going to place the date. In this particular case, I'm going to do this in the reverse standard so that I'm able to always filter based on year, then month, then day. And so here I'm going to put 2021/03/03, and now I'll be able to search at any given time for the notes that are dated for that item. I'm also going to decide to tag this note meetings. Okay, and so I'm just going to choose to create a new tag called meetings. And now any of my meetings are going to be both tagged meetings, and for company meeting notes are going to go into my company meetings notebook. Okay, because I can have other meetings. Say that I have a meeting with my doctor, I want to place that into the meetings notebook inside of my health folder, my health notebook, and I'm going to go ahead and place that there, but I'm also going to tag it meetings so that I'm able to go ahead and see that. And here I'm going to take notes and I'm going to capture information, all kinds of fun things. And yes, there's some action items that are going to be embedded in here where I might have, task B1, task B2, and task B3. Okay, and so we have some additional items now that we have gone ahead and created right here inside of the task note and inside of the meeting note. And now we're going to do that throughout any given day. Every meeting we go into, we're going to create the note. We're going to go ahead and capture those pieces of information as we have notes. If we have meeting notes, I will take notes in the meeting here, and so on and so forth. Okay, great. Just simple example. Well, now what we want to do is after every meeting, make sure that we turn these items into actionable pieces. So for example, task B1, task B2, and task B3, after a couple of days, if I haven't looked at this note again, I'm not going to know to do that thing. So I really like to actually take these items and turn them into individual notes in my productivity system. And so what I like to just recommend is to go into here and go into your actions notebook, and you will just copy and paste these as new notes. Now there are keyboard shortcuts for doing these things, lots of ways in which we can do this, but in essence, I'm going to go ahead and say Control-Alt-N. I'm going to go ahead and in essence just create them, copy and paste those items. So this would be, pretend that I'm copying and pasting, and I'm going to create task B1. I'm going to do this again for task B2. Right, task B2, and so on and so forth, right? And now they are in the actions notebook, and what I like to do is I like to tag everything that is a like item together, and so these are all going to be tasked as actions. I like to pluralize my tags, right? So action is going to be actions, and they're all going to be tagged as actions because there are multiple things connected to each other, and so I'm always going to just pluralize tags. Back to that idea of organizing and being consistent about our namings. So all of my tags are just the plural if it's possible. And that makes it easy because if I have to make a decision between tagging something and not tagging something because I don't know what the tag's name is, because I can't remember, is it action or actions? That's causing me time to have to think about it. If I always know it's pluralized, then it's very easy, and then I'm not making mistakes in accidentally tagging something and creating a new tag called action versus making it, versus tagging it correctly as actions. Okay, so just always remember to just choose one. It doesn't have to be plural, but it also has to be the same. So you need to make sure that actions is always actions, or maybe you decide that it's going to be tasks, or maybe it's going to be next steps. But just choose whether it's next step or next steps, or are you going to do next hyphen steps, and therefore put a hyphen between the two words. I would suggest not, because that's an extra keystroke for no reason, but maybe for aesthetic purposes you really want to see those two words separated. Doesn't matter, just be consistent. Okay, so we now have made an individual action for each of those items. And of course, we may have a project associated with this, and again, we want to be able to go in and select those items and associate them where we need to, right? So always be connecting. So then I think, okay, where do I need these to be linked in the rest of my system? Is there a project associated with this? If there is, then let me go to that project. If there isn't a project, well, maybe I need to create a project, okay? And so now I go into the system and I say, okay, this is project B, 1, 2, 3, and now let me go ahead and throw in my tasks associated with that. These are on my clipboard because I copied the internal note links for them, and again, I can do the same thing. I can turn these into a checklist, and now I have the ability to move them up and down in terms of seeing them. Now the tasks aren't lost in the system. When I'm ready to work on project B1, 2, 3, task B1 and task B2 are going to be there. Okay, and I would do that with task B3 as well, of course, but for demonstrative purposes, this is how we get it in there. Okay, so we want to be able to do that. Again, for my purposes, I would also tag this projects. That's just my own way of doing things, and so I want to make sure that everything in the system is tagged like kind things are always tagged. And so I would just, every couple of weeks see that some of these tags are not tagged, just from other demonstrations and everything else like that. Every couple of weeks, I would just go into my projects notebook and make sure that I've tagged everything projects. And that way, I know that everything in the projects notebook is a project, and that gives me the ability to search for these things across the system. So consistently tagging things as projects in this notebook means that any other projects that are anywhere else in the system, I can now find them along with everything in the projects notebook. Because it's not always going to be the case that everything is going to neatly stand in only one notebook. There is a possibility that I could have a project inside of another notebook, and I want to be able to find that. And I want to find all of the projects, not just the projects that are sitting in the projects notebook. Okay, so maybe, for example, you have a big project and you call that project B as its own notebook under company, and you want to be able to identify that project note in your company projects notebook, and so you would then tag that projects also. And the only way you're going to find that across the entire system is by typing in projects, and then you will see the tag here for projects, and then click on that and it will filter all of the projects together across all of the notebooks, right? And so in this particular place, this is probably only projects that are inside of the projects notebook, but you get my point, right? I want to be able to find those things across the entire system. Okay, last but not least is action. Action is so important when it comes to grouping actions that we have to think about how actions are grouped together for three particular reasons. One is resource availability. That is, we can tag things based on time and location. It could also be a physical resource, like you must have your garden shears in order to do gardening. So you could say, okay, well, I can't do task A2 because it requires garden shears. And so what we do is we can tag things to get into action based on a limitation like time or energy or otherwise. That is time or location or otherwise, a resource limitation. So we could say, you know what, I need to be at home. And so I can type in home, and that's a resource limitation because it's a location. I can't do work that can only be at home, at the grocery store, or at work. So you may decide also that, well, when I'm at work, I shouldn't be doing personal work, and so I need to do that at home. So you can categorize that by that limitation that has been set. So this action is going to be set at home. But of course, it doesn't stop there. We then start to think about efficiency. Like tasks can be grouped together for efficiency. Now, I don't tend to work that way. I don't do all of my phone calls together. I don't do all of my emails together at one point. I tend to work based on projects, but for efficiency purposes, it is helpful to be able to say, okay, I've got these 3 phone calls that I have to make to the various utilities and the bank and so on and so forth. I don't need to, I don't need to put those inside of a project and so on and so forth. So we're going to go ahead and combine things by their context, their efficiency purpose task together, and we'll call those calls. So we can then say, okay, for efficiency purposes, I want to make all these calls together. I'm going to group them together. I'm going to do that at home, right? That's resource and then our efficiency purposes. But maybe sometimes you don't want to do that and you want to be able to think about it from the perspective of effectiveness. And this is really where energy, mood, complexity, or difficulty really come into play. Now, energy and mood is pretty interesting to think about generally. You all have something called a biological prime time. That is, there's a time of your day when you are most with it. You're on your A game at that moment in the day. There may be multiple times of the day when you're like that, but there's usually one particular time in the day when you're just really sharp. And that energy moment in time, you should be placing your most difficult tasks, the tasks that are going to take the most energy, mentally, emotionally, otherwise. And so you could decide that these are, you have a tag called high energy or biological prime time. So you could have a BPT tag, and you can tag all of your tasks as BPT for those things that are really heavy lifting tasks, and you want to have those done at a particular time of the day. You could also do it on mood. So you can do it based on, good mood, bad mood. For example, if I'm in a bad mood, that's really the time for me to fill the stapler with staples. It's the time for me to replace the ink cartridge in my fountain pens, restack the paper in my printer. Let me just do those physical things that don't require a lot of energy, because if I'm upset, I want to just do something that doesn't require me to have to think too much about output. I just want to do physical things, little things around the office. And so I do them. When I get done, I've expended a little bit of energy on mindless activities and I feel better. Okay, so that's something that I know about myself, and now I can apply that to my own ecosystem. So think about things from energy and mood and how you go ahead and tag them appropriately. And then the next 2 items are, of course, complexity and difficulty. Those 2 things are very different. Complexity is just literally things going from one step to multi-step. If something is multi-step, typically it's not a task. It then becomes a project. But there are many times where a task may just have a few things in it. And the task complexity means that you need to break it down into multiple parts. So for example, you might decide, just for simplicity purposes, for me to do this task, I need to do step 1, then do step 2, and then do step 3. This allows us to be able to take this particular action that is represented by a note and make it not necessarily easier to do, but it makes it a little bit easier to do by reducing its complexity. Okay? And so we know that if something is complex, then we need to make it simpler. We need to be able to identify what the individual components are for us to get that thing accomplished. But there's another step to that, which is difficulty. Is it really going to be strenuous for you, thinking-wise or physically, for you to go ahead and do that? So complexity is simple to complex. That is, simple things, as more steps are involved, become more complex. And then there's difficulty, which is this is a hard task. This is going to take more exertion of energy for me to be able to make that happen. So for example, sending a very long email, while is a very simple task, email Bob about the contract, that's a simple task to understand. I need to email Bob about it. But I also know that it's going to take me a lot of thought and referencing a bunch of documents in order to be able to put that together. That's going to be difficult for me. Okay? And the difficulty may be partially because of complexity, but it's also just heavy lifting. It's going to take a lot out of me. It's going to probably take me about 30 minutes to sit down and really slog through that email. So we can then decide what are hard tasks versus what are easy tasks, right? Simple and complex is different than easy to difficult. So we might want to keep those things in mind. All to say that we have different ways of grouping actions together for greater productivity. We can group things based on resource availability, based on efficiency, and based on effectiveness. And if we go over to our tags, we can go ahead and see how some of those things are set up so that we can see how we can slice and dice these things. So you can see here that I've created different types of productivity tags and different types of actions for basis of efficiency. So here you can see under actions here, we have the agendas, as I talked about earlier. We have calls, messages, waiting fors, and even a writing tag. So when I want to write something, I can go ahead and do that. Now, if we go in here, we can now start to create some of these other tags that we were talking about. So for example, I can go in here under productivity and I can say, let's go to under actions, and I can create a new nested tag under actions, and we can call this energy mood. Now, I'm not actually going to use this energy or mood tag in any notes. It's actually just used as a container for other tags underneath actions. And so what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to create a new subtag, and I'm going to call this BPT for biological prime time. So when I need to do something that's really going to take a lot of mental emotional energy, I might choose to do that. And this is counter to using, say, maybe a complexity or a difficulty tag. I'm going to use energy and mood as the mechanism for being able to do that, and maybe then I'll use a common one, which is brain dead. And so I might choose a brain dead or mindless or super easy for energy. But if I'm brain dead, these are going to be things that I'm going to do when I am brain dead. Okay, so then we can go ahead and decide on location, like I said, efficiency purposes, like grouping other tags together. That's where calls comes into play, right? Agendas comes into play here as well. And let's think about some difficulty ones. So if I create a difficulty, so if I say task difficulty, again, this is just a container. It's not going to actually ever be used, but I can create some tags that are around task difficulty. So I can say easy, and then I can also say tough. And now I can tag any tasks that are in my system as easy or tough. And now I know when something's easy, it's things that I can just get through really quickly. Now, if it's not tagged easy or tough, then it's just a medium, normal task. It's going to take an average amount of energy to accomplish. So we don't need to actually create every type of tag. Remember that there is a baseline, and then there is that which is modifying it. So always remember that when you're creating tags, you don't have to create tags and tag everything. The thing that's most common is the thing that you actually probably don't want to tag. You don't want to create a tag for normative. You don't want to tag it for like the common thing, right? You want to tag for the things that are unique. So in this case, I'm not going to create one for medium difficulty. I'm just going to create one for easy and tough because the absence of the tag tells me the difficulty is normative. Okay? And so that's really how you make notes in the system more actionable, because we're identifying each item as a note, and then we can take it one final step further and add what are called reminders to them. So at the bottom of every note now, you will see a little reminder item, and we can turn on that little bell, and we can actually set a date and time to it to say, you know what, my biological prime time is 9 a.m. Any given Thursday. So if I go ahead and click tomorrow at 9 a.m., which will be Thursday morning, I click add reminder, and now I have a little reminder bell here. And what will happen is if I have Evernote mobile installed and Evernote desktop installed, or Evernote web, where I'm using it in the browser, if I have notifications turned on those devices, I will now get a notification when it's time to do task A2. And so now I will be reminded about that particular item by Evernote to do it at that time. So this can be very, very useful. And of course, if I'm not at home when it goes off, then I can say, oh, you know what, I better run home and take care of that task. Or I can say, you know what, I better defer this till later. And so when I get home, I will go ahead and do that. I can click on the bell icon again and then set the time to when I know I will be home. So I can say, okay, I'm going to be home at 6 p.m., click done, and now it will re-register that reminder, and I will get reminded at 6 p.m. when I know I'm going to be at home to make that phone call. Okay, so very easy to kind of think about how to contextualize grouping actions together for resource availability, that is time and location, effectiveness, grouping like tasks together, and then of course for effectiveness. So efficiency is like tasks together, and then effectiveness is dealing with things like energy, mood, complexity, and difficulty. So I hope this was useful in being able to help you understand a little bit more about making things in Evernote a little bit more actionable from capturing, organizing, and taking action on them. Now, just a quick note, if you want, like I said, you'll get access to these slides from Francis. I don't know how he's going to share it with you, but I'll make sure he does. And so those will be in there. The link to, of course, the Life Categories note is embedded in this slide deck as well. And I have actually an ongoing Evernote Masterclass series that I've been doing, and they are Getting Started with Evernote, which just finished. The next one is Going Further with Evernote, which starts on March 15th, and then Pushing the Envelope with Evernote. And so the three of those together are the Evernote Masterclass series. Getting Started with Evernote is the basics, from the ground up, how to use Evernote 10. With Going Further with Evernote, what we're going to be doing is actually implementing some personal productivity methodologies like personal Kanban, bullet journal, getting things done, really looking at them as an overview of the implementations in order to show further skills within Evernote. And then later in the year, we're going to be doing pushing the envelope with Evernote. That's really going to be lots of business case uses. Again, we're just using those as analogies for being able to learn more advanced features within Evernote. So if you're interested in learning more about Evernote, the courses Going Further with Evernote and Pushing the Envelope with Evernote, the live sessions are actually free to attend. I'm charging for the video replays, our live office hours, and any templates that we're creating. Those are being put into our quote-unquote premium course, and so those are available for registration and purchase. But the live sessions for Going Further with Evernote and Pushing the Envelope with Evernote are free to attend. You can join me for those. If you're interested, you can go ahead over to focus@work.co/Evernote Masterclass. You can go ahead and RSVP there. You'll RSVP through Zoom, so you'll click on the little free registration button. You can go ahead and do that. We start on 3:15. And so, again, like I said, we are live free. If you want to see the replays afterward, you can just get the premium course. Also note that the premium course includes the lower tier item. So if you purchase Going Further with Evernote, the premium course, you also get the recordings for Getting Started with Evernote. So you get those two bundled. If you get Pushing the Envelope with Evernote, you get the two others bundled as well. So you get Going Further with Evernote and Getting Started with Evernote. Even though we haven't done Going Further with Evernote yet and Pushing the Envelope with Evernote, you will get those three together. So the video replays, the recorded live office hours, and the templates are all baked into it. So once they are recorded, once we do host the live sessions, those actually get archived in those courses. So it's kind of a nice perk that you get them by purchasing them now and having them all together. For those of you who don't know, I run a small digital community called Personal Productivity Club. They are for personal productivity enthusiasts. I'm presuming you are if you are attending something called the Task Management and Time Blocking Summit. And so if you're interested in joining us, feel free to head over to www.personalproductivity.club, and I look forward to seeing you there. And so if you have any questions, as I noted at the top of our discussion together, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is on the screen, my podcast as well at gettingmoredonewithEvernote.com, and you can hear me talk about how much I love Evernote more in that when I put out those episodes. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I look forward to your feedback. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions about what we talked about today. And with that, take care, and here's to your productive life.